So rejecting that mentality, you don't need to be on a diet and just focus on living your life and eating and doing things that make your body feel good. Welcome to the Complete Nutrition Podcast.
The podcast where we break free from the dieting cycle and explore sustainable, realistic ways to improve your health.
I'm Kylie, a registered dietitian with over 10 years of experience.
And I'm Spencer, and I've been eating food my entire life. And I happen to be a nurse.
Each week, we dive into the science, psychology, and strategies behind mindful eating and sustainable change.
Whether you're here to transform your relationship with food, learn how to make lasting lifestyle changes, or are simply curious about what true health looks like, you're in the right place.
We'd invite you to subscribe and tag along if you'd like to stop dieting and start living. This episode is brought to you by the vitamin biotin. It is a B vitamin, which means it's water soluble, and it actually it's an interesting vitamin because it doesn't have a lot of research behind it. And so we do know that it does help. It's in like the hard proteins of our body, so like hair and nail. And so it's touted to be this supplement that's supposed to make your nails better and your hair better. However, there's actually no research supporting that. And I dove in to see what research was available for this particular vitamin. And there's a lot more research for veterinary science or animal studies.
What
and
do they
that,
use it for in
that
animals?
They put it in their feed and it helps with hoof health. And increasing milk production.
Oh, so maybe it helps with their fingernails, I guess?
I don't know. This is all anecdotal evidence. Who knows if it's placebo or, but I do have clients who use it and feel like it does help with hair and nail.
Isn't it in your fancy conditioner? Or isn't it the name or something of your fancy conditioner?
I have no idea.
I swear it says.
No idea. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not why I bought the conditioner. We're not feeding into biotin myths.
Her
Anyways,
conditioner is because it tingles on her head. That's why she bought it. Anyway.
Yeah, it has peppermint in it is why I bought it. But interestingly enough, a biotin deficiency is non-existent. And so it's not really a nutrient of concern, but I did want to bring it up because people all the time talk about it and are taking supplements for it.
But you'll be fine if you never take it.
Yeah. And so there's not really any evidence supporting that it actually does any difference to your hair and nails.
Did you see what it's even found in? Like what?
Oh, yeah. It's in animal foods.
Oh, did you say that? Sorry.
No, not yet. But
okay.
Yeah.
Animal foods. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're all probably getting plenty of biotin then.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all eat animal products.
So an interesting, I just think nutrition's so interesting. Like what we run with when there's not really any research supporting it. So
yeah.
But who knows? Maybe if you're a researcher, that's where the next $1 million supplement is a biotin hair supplement.
Maybe it cures baldness. I don't know.
Doubtful. Spencer's bald.
Taken in huge amounts.
Okay. Well, today we are continuing our discussion around intuitive eating, and we'll probably break this up into 2 parts. So part 1 will be on the first 5 principles. And again, a reminder, we do encourage, if any of this resonates with you, we would encourage you to go buy their books or look up their resources. Evelyn, Tribole, and Elyse Resch, they are the founders and the original intuitive eating dietitians, and created this movement towards more of an anti-diet approach.
We like anti-diet. Okay. So they split it up into 10 principles of intuitive eating. But Kylie will walk us through those principles. What are the 10 principles, Kylie? Just give us a list and then we can go through them.
Yep. Okay. So first is reject the diet culture. Second is honor your hunger. Third is make peace with food. Fourth is discover the satisfaction factor. 5, feel your fullness. 6, challenge the food police. 7, cope with your emotions with kindness. 8, respect your body. 9, movement and feel the difference. 10, honor your health through gentle nutrition. And we are going to talk about the first 5 today.
Okay. All right. So the first one then is rejecting the diet mentality. How does one reject the diet mentality?
And it's interesting because I feel like we as a society in the States, we are so weight centric and so weight focused. And it's this $1 billion business that, I mean, it works because it doesn't work. And so it keeps having us come back, right? And so rejecting the diet mentality is giving yourself permission to not be on a diet and to focus on lifestyle changes, a lifestyle as opposed to being on a diet and then transitioning. I hear this all the time that people, when I express concern about certain diets that people are on, the response is, oh, this won't be forever and then I'll transition into normal eating. And it just, it just doesn't work that way. And sometimes when people hear rejecting the diet mentality, they think that we're just throwing nutrition out the window. And we're still going to be focused on nutrition principles and guidelines, but without this big being on a diet, without these restrictions, and making sure that any of the changes that you're doing are sustainable within your bandwidth and make you feel good and feel happy, and focusing on these long-term changes and long-term goals. And it definitely requires a lot of patience because these changes oftentimes don't produce the outcome that we're striving for when we are doing a diet. So stopping participating in extreme diets, if it seems too extreme and if it seems like you can't maintain it, that's probably a good sign that it's a diet and you shouldn't be on it. And I think it's interesting also just this diet culture in America. Without fail, during December, someone's talking about the diet that they're going to start in January, or like right now when we're approaching summer, it's like the hot girl summer, and people, like a lot of people come and talk to me like, oh, I need to get fit for summer, or like it's swimsuit season. And we're just always thinking about the next diet or the next diet season. And really we need to stop engaging in this talk and engaging in this, I think, behavior of normalizing being on a diet. With you being a man, do you feel like, does it seem to you like people are always on a diet?
Maybe not diet, but I mean, when you say like swimsuit season, I just like think about like going to the gym and like getting buff.
So maybe, summer. But same kinda, thing. Yeah. Do you feel like your friends go on like high protein, like what did they call it when they like slash maybe a couple weight?
Of them. Yeah, definitely a couple that I can think of for sure, or at least one that I can think of for sure. But
yeah, it's just an interesting culture. And I have a sister who she did her master's in Belgium. And one of the things that she told me that I thought was really interesting, she said it was so refreshing being in Belgium. And they were there for several years and so went through several holiday seasons. And she just mentioned like at any party or any holiday celebration that she went to, nobody said anything about their weight or the diet they were going to be on or like how this food was going straight to their hips. It just wasn't part of their culture of what they discussed. And it was just very neutral. And I just think we are so diet focused here. So rejecting that mentality, you don't need to be on a diet, and just focus on living your life and eating and doing things that make your body feel good.
Nice. And obviously that can be easier said than done.
Of course.
And this is where I feel like, therapy can come into place. And anyway, we're seeing a dietitian.
Yeah.
All right. Second one. What about honoring your hunger? What does that mean? And how do you do it?
Well, we talked a little bit about this last time when we were talking about the eating personalities, but listening and noticing your cues. which when I say cues, your hunger cues, when you start to feel hungry. And a lot of times, depending on the person, sometimes it's been so long that they either, I don't know, haven't eaten consistently or they're so stressed or, I mean, whatever the situation is. Sometimes I have people that don't have cues. And if you don't have cues, a little bit of this of honoring your hunger is healing your metabolism, which is through eating consistently. And then looking through like what might be inhibiting your hunger cues. Are you stressed? Are you setting good boundaries with yourself, with work, with others so you can take time to eat? And when we talk about hunger and hunger cues, there's a hunger scale that goes, it's a hunger and fullness scale. It goes 1 to 10. So 1 to 5 are going to be hungry levels. So 1 and 2 are like super starving, starting to feel shaky. It's been a long time since you've eaten. 3 and 4, your stomach's growling and you're needing to eat. 5 is like neither here nor there. And the more likely or the more often we get to a 1 or 2, the super duper hungry, the more likely we are to overeat. And so trying to listen when our body first starts telling us that we're a 3 or 4, we're hungry, and eating something is going to be the best thing for our metabolism, the best thing for our body. And so really, I mean, honoring what your body's trying to tell you instead of pushing through or, I mean, whatever you're doing. And I think another common misconception is that people feel like in order to be healthy, that they need to ignore hunger cues. And it's like good to feel hungry. But we need to listen to what our body is telling us. And if you think about kids,
like people are trying to starve themselves.
No, I mean, well, I think maybe try. I think so many people, especially who I work with, feel really guilty about eating or feeling full because they feel like they should be feeling hungry.
Like on the edge all the time, where they're like restraining themselves.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. And that just really, I mean, that's you.
Like some grumpy people.
Grumpy people, but then it's not, I mean, honoring those hormones and those cues, and it's keeping you in this starvation mode. And that's not good for our bodies.
No, it just forces your body to store whatever you do eat as fat, right?
I mean, depending on the person, but yeah, it can shift or slow down your metabolism if you're not feeding yourself. And I think if you think about kids, or I mean, we don't have any kids, but we have nieces and nephews. And as adults, so many of us are so fearful of listening to our bodies, and we feel like we have to track and know what we're going to eat and how much we're eating. But if you think about as kids, like no one's running around your kid following them with MyFitnessPal or an app tracking everything that they're eating. And naturally, we're all born with these hormones that tell us when we're hungry, when we're full. And if you've ever fed a kid, sometimes there's days that they eat like birds, sometimes they eat really good, but they know their body. And then I think once we hit kindergarten, we start doing what's called an external eating, where we eat based off of external cues. We eat because it's lunchtime, or we eat because we paid $30 for this meal. We eat because it's a holiday food that we don't get all the time. And so we stop eating based off of these hunger cues. So getting back to the place where you're hearing and feeling hungry, and then stopping what you're doing and eating, which sometimes is hard. Like I feel like, yeah, especially Spencer's a nurse. And I mean, how well do you feel like you honor your hunger cues?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about eating personalities, and mine was
the chaotic eater,
where I eat really quickly just to like fuel myself, basically.
Or sometimes like skip meals because you don't have time because you're taking care of patients. Yeah. So yes, there's definitely a situation where it is hard to honor those cues. But I mean, that's where that rings true to you, is talking through, well, what can change? What could be different?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Principle number 3, making peace with food. What does that mean? how do you make peace with an inanimate object? And what can you do to do that?
Well, if you think about, I think we make food the enemy.
Yeah.
And we sometimes we look at, let's say, like a piece of cake, and we demonize it. We put morals to food, and our brain looks at different food and says, oh, that food's really bad or that food's really good. And so a part of making peace with food goes back to some of our earlier modules of avoiding this deprivation cycle, avoiding extreme rules, of saying that we can't and shouldn't have these foods, and focusing on what we call as food habituation, which is exposing ourselves to these foods that we demonize, foods that we feel like are bad. And
Some exposure therapy.
Exposure therapy of eating those foods to a point where they no longer have this fixation and this control on us. And when I work with clients on making peace with food, I do a lot of education around nutritional science. I mean, that's what helped me in my own journey of making peace with food, is really learning the science behind nutrition and food and eating, that it suddenly I was able to look at food and not demonize it or put morals to it. And it's the same idea as that your brain might look at food and think it's good or bad, but your body is just going to break that down and utilize it for carbs and protein and fat. And that's all food is. It just is broken down into nutrients, and there's no morals tied to it. And we just need to get this balance. So giving yourself unconditional permission to eat, not having guilt behind what you're eating, and identifying, I would recommend like writing down what are your food rules, and then trying to work through some of that food habituation, or learning about nutrition and digestion and what those foods are actually doing in your body.
That is hard, though, I'm sure, is to not make intuitive eating into a diet itself.
Oh, and that, yeah. And I was going to say that too, is that sometimes, like I'll talk to people about all foods fit and all foods in moderation. And then people will take that and then turn that also into a food rule. Yeah. All foods in moderation. And then they think, well, if I'm not eating this food in moderation, and then it still drives that deprivation cycle. Yep. So yeah, I mean, it can be a hard thing to settle in and feel comfortable with. Intuitive eating is also not a diet. It's going to be days where you do overeat on some foods. It's days that you maybe undereat on some types of foods. But it's not,
practice.
It takes
to
practice
listen to your body. Yeah.
But it also ebbs and flows. It's not like this perfect thing that you always are an intuitive eater, or always, like are eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. It's going to ebb and flow.
And your body's not always going to want the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it takes practice for sure. I've definitely gotten better at it living with you, but
that's good.
Yeah. It is good. All right. Principle 4, discovering the satisfaction factor.
This one, I really like this one because, again, it's just further permission to eat the foods that we are wanting, which people take that and think, oh my gosh, she's just telling us to eat whatever we want. And I mean, like, stay with us here, because we're going to go through all the principles. This is just one of 10 principles. So this one, they in their book, they discuss Japanese philosophy and Japanese culture for around health, is that there is a focus of pleasure, and that they include that is an important piece to health, is like finding things that give us pleasure. And food is one of those things. There's comfort foods that make us happy, and food is pleasure. And there's so much guilt that as Americans, I think we tie around, like guilty pleasure foods, that we tie around different foods that we like. And there are foods that taste good for a reason. We have comfort foods for a reason. And the satisfaction factor is finding foods that satisfy you, not just eating foods because they're like what your body needs or what you're missing, but finding foods that you're really wanting that make you feel satisfied, that you got what you needed in terms of like emotional and physical in all of its senses. And too often I'll have people tell me like, oh, if it tastes gross, it's probably healthy. It's probably good for you. And I really don't like that phrase or that comment because that's not how it works.
That's what I've always heard and sometimes said, like health food. It tastes gross, though. It must be health food.
No, I think eating balanced and eating well tastes good. And I'll often see people too, as we're working through some of these principles. Let's say you get a craving for, I don't know, like a donut or something, and which is quote unquote unhealthy. And then people think, oh, I shouldn't eat the donut. I'm going to have some carrots and ranch. And then you still want the donut. You think, no, I'm going to have an apple and peanut butter. And then you still want the donut. And then you have some crackers and cheese, but you still want some donut. And you go through all these foods and then finally you eat the donut. But then you've also eaten, you know, a whole bunch of other calories that potentially you didn't really want. And maybe, I mean, in that sense, like maybe it was in excess because you went through all these foods that didn't satisfy you. The satisfaction factor basically is telling us to eat the donut and move on and be satisfied and
rather than fixate on it.
Keep living your life. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Because that's where unhealthy eating comes in, right?
Exactly.
If you fixate on something.
Yeah. If it's like seen as like something we shouldn't be eating, then that drives that deprivation cycle.
Want what we don't have.
Yeah. So yeah, eat what makes you feel, that makes you feel satisfied. And it's not throwing health out the window, which we'll go through the rest of these principles, but I'll, I guess, foreshadow the 10th principle is gentle nutrition, which is still incorporating foods that our body needs.
Yeah.
But also foods that satisfy us.
Pleasure, Japanese philosophy.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to look more of that philosophy up. That sounds interesting. Okay. The last principle that we'll talk about in this episode is principle 5, feeling your fullness. What is that?
I mean, so that hunger fullness scale that we talked about at the or when we were talking about hunger. So 1 through 5 is hunger, and then 5 through 10. So 5 is like that middle ground, not hungry or not full. 6 and 7, you're starting to feel full. You feel the food in your stomach. You feel your stretch receptors. 8 and 9, you're starting to feel uncomfortable. It's starting to feel heavy. It's like that moment where you feel like you have to sit down, you have to digest, you're feeling heavy.
Thanksgiving meals.
Yeah. And then 10, I would say, is like you feel so full that you're sick and you've made yourself sick. You feel like you're going to throw up. And so I think feeling your fullness goes hand in hand with listening to your hunger cues and responding to them. Like I said, the more often you get to one extreme of hunger, the more likely you are to overeat. And so listening to these cues, sometimes I'll give them this assignment or homework to track their hunger fullness cues, just to try and be more mindful and more in tune with what cues are going on and what impacts those cues. Because you might have some triggers, like if you're tired, you might be hungrier. If you're stressed, you might notice that you're hungrier, or maybe you don't notice your fullness cues as much. And so really just creating this mindfulness around what things impact your hunger and fullness cues. And I think with fullness, sometimes people, they can be, again, depending on what type of an eater you are, right? If you're a really chaotic eater and you're just going fast, sometimes it's hard to feel the fullness in the moment, or you get to the point where you've eaten so fast and you feel overly full. So if you have trouble feeling your fullness or feeling like satiated,
just go slow.
Well, these are some things that I'll have people work on, is slowing down, removing distractions. If you're eating in front of the TV, you're eating, I don't know, while on your phone, paying more attention to what you're feeling. And then we'll also, with this principle, we'll talk through eating foods that help you to feel full. Because let's say and not saying that carbs are bad, right? This is not what I'm saying, but we do need a balance. If you have a meal that's mostly carbs, you're probably not going to feel full, or your fullness won't last. And so we'll talk through that balance of trying to add like fats or proteins or higher fiber foods that can help you to stay full. So
Nice.
these are all within this principle of feeling your fullness, and then strategies if you feel like you have trouble staying full of how to make this, I guess, better.
Okay. So those are the first 5 principles of intuitive eating by, oh boy, Evelyn Tribole
And Elyse Resch.
and Elyse Resch.
Yeah.
Okay. A quick review. I'll just give the titles of each. The first one is rejecting diet culture. 2 is honoring your hunger. 3 is making peace with food. 4 is discovering the satisfaction factor. And 5 is feeling your fullness. In the next episode, we'll talk about 6 through 10, right?
Yep, for part 2.
Part 2. Stay tuned.
If you are listening, we imagine that you are probably on your own health journey. Thank you so much for letting us be a part of this journey. We want to invite you to consider these 3 questions as a weekly personal check-in.
The first question is that maintaining a positive mindset is crucial for success. So, what are your victories and your wins from the past week?
Second question, what are your intentions or focus or goals for this next week? Reminder that the simpler and more realistic, the better.
And the last question is, what are you going to do to accomplish this goal? Be specific, and we invite you to write this down somewhere. What specific things will you do to reach this goal of yours?
Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you are listening to, we would invite you to subscribe. We'd also invite you to leave a review. If you do, you will be entered into our monthly drawing to win a box of meal deliveries. Take a screenshot of your review and send it to Complete Nutrition, complete with a K, completenutrition@gmail.com. You can also check us out online at www.complete-nutrition.com or on Instagram at complete_nutrition.